We study two main sets of teachings here at the Abbey. And one of them is the Lam Rim, which is the gradual path to awakening, and the other is the Lojong, or thought transformation or mind training practices. And I wanted to talk today about we'll start talking about the 5 forces or the 5 powers. And these are from the 7-point thought transformation text, which is the most well-known mind training text, really, but there's a number of them. And that, when Venerable, she's taught on that text, but she also taught on mind training like rays of the sun, which is a combination. That text is unique because it's a combination of Lam Rim and Lojong. And there's not too many of those, I believe. Anyway, so in the 7-point thought transformation, this would be point 4, which is elucidating a lifetime's practice, which another way of saying that is, how are you going to utilize your practice in your whole life? And they break, and then the point itself is, blend the practice of one's life with the 5 forces. Or another text says, a summary of the essential instructions trained in the 5 forces. And so the context of these is really, they're taught twice. One, how to practice them in this life, and another, how to practice these at the time of death. And so we're going to talk about these as how to practice in this lifetime, because there are 5 of these forces, and I'll just list them here. We're going to talk about the first one today. There's the power or the force of motivation, the power of what they say, the virtuous seed or the white seed, which is essentially virtuous karmic actions, the power of destruction, and that's a particular kind. It's not like go out and, get an axe and cut down trees or destroy things. It's not that. The power of prayers of aspiration, and then the power of familiarity or acquaintance. And that's the order that you practice them in the life, and at death time they switch the order around and they're done slightly differently. And so the author of Mind Training Like Rays of the Sun who is Nam Kapel, he describes these this way: I must set a strong determination thinking I shall not let the primary or secondary disturbing emotions, the afflictions, which arise from the misconception of a self, dominate my activities of body and speech, even for a moment, from now until I reach enlightenment, or at any time in this life until I die, or this year, or this month, and today in particular. Boom. So he's very strong in that, bringing it down to this day. And so basically, we're familiar with what they're referring to here, the primary, secondary disturbing emotions. That's what we call the root afflictions, the 6 root afflictions, like anger, attachment, ignorance, desire, doubt, afflicted views. I guess we call it, desire, not attachment. Pride. And then the secondary ones, which there are 20 of, and I won't list all of them, but there are things like resentment and jealousy, miserliness, lethargy, lack of non-faith or lack of faith, laziness. And Venerable Children, after she listed all these, she said, and you have all of these, and in addition you have forgetfulness. Because we can't remember what the 20 are, So that was her joke. And then the part of where Nam Kapela is saying these arise from the misconception of a self, that's this conception we have about the self of persons or the self of phenomena, basically inherent existence. So we're grasping at that, and so we want to try not to let these things dominate our mind. And the first part here is setting our motivation, our intention. And I was thinking about, you asked me something I learned from Darshan Rinpoche. One thing I remember him saying once to somebody, I learned a lot from watching him interact with people. And one time somebody said, it was kind of like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I think that'd be a nice thing to do, or yeah, I'll try to do that. I think that's what he said, I'll try to do that. And he got like, no, not I'll try, I will do it. And it was this big motivation, don't say I'll try, say I will. And yeah, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Let's stop these disturbing emotions, and But the problem is they're so strong. I mean, as Venerable Children, when she taught on this recently, she said, you want to stop them early, but it's hard. She said, be vigilant, stop the afflictions as soon as they arise, but this is very hard to do, as we all have experienced. So when we talk about motivation, a lot of times we bring up the motivations that we set each morning, because these thought training teachings, they're all about bodhicitta. This is the main thing here. So I think that's why it makes sense to talk about the motivations we set in the morning. First, not to do any harm, and then to be a benefit, and then to try to generate bodhicitta and during the course of our day, which is our highest aspiration. And I really enjoyed the way Venerable Children, when she taught this fall, it's like she said, utilize your 3 doors to act out bodhicitta. Realign your life so that Dharma is the central thing and not what I want or what I expect. She was just so clear. So we set this motivation in the morning we want to try to act out this bodhicitta. I find that kind of helpful because it seems kind of off and far away. But when I just think about how do I move through the day, I could bring that to mind and make that, at least try to simulate what you think it might look like, and just put that out there as like, yeah, I want to try to utilize my body, speech, and mind in this way. And of course, the basis of that is going to be kindness, a feeling of kindness. So that's our basic approach that we want to take in life. So this motivation, I think, is quite important. And recently, as a little side note, I read something that our chaplain sent me. I asked him for some references for some things to read about the effect of religious programs in prisons, the long-term effects. And there's a lot of research that's been done. So I was opening up some of the, downloading some things from two authors in particular that he likes. And it was interesting, in this one page, they just had these list of what the religions are and how much those incarcerated people have the potential for violent crime in prison. And the Buddhists were at the very bottom of the list. They had listed 15 or 20 religions on the page, and boom, the least likely to be violent in prison were the Buddhists. Go Buddhists! But why? Why would that be? To me, it was like, well, I don't know. I didn't read the whole thing. I don't know if they just weren't as many. I don't know how they did their statistics or anything. But all I'm making the point is that our motivation is really crucial. And to, whatever you do, your motivation is the most important aspect of it. So that determines what the action's going to be, essentially. If your motivation is poor, it doesn't matter how it looks. It's not going to be a wholesome action. And eventually it comes around. So